It just took me. This movie took me and it had control of me for the 2 hours that it was on. And this is what is so special about a movie like Leave the World Behind, is that you can go into something, not know what it's about at all, and then just be completely blown away.
You buy it. You buy what these characters are believing. You buy what they're going through. And the effects and the way the cinematography is done creates such a compelling visual narrative that it pulls you right into the movie. I remember so many times all three of us would just look at each other in shock.
If Mahershala Ali showed up in a tuxedo in front of my door, 100% I'm letting him in. I don't care if he kills me. What do we do? Can we operate as a whole, or do we just survive on our own and everyone fends for themselves? You find yourself asking, what would you do if you were in their shoes?
Hello and welcome to the movie podcast review for Leave the World Behind. My name is Shahbaz, and who I have not left behind here are my co-hosts, my lovely co-hosts who, even in the face of adversity, I would have them with me through it all. We would find our way out of whatever this mess is. Daniel and Anthony. Daniel, how are you doing today?
Knock, knock, knock. Can I come in, please?
I don't like any of that. Now you're suspicious, and I don't want you in the house.
What's your respect? I just said, can I come in, please?
But you said knock, knock. Like, I'm assuming you didn't knock, though. You said it.
Well,
like,
I don't want to
knock.
I'm not going to knock on the door right now, man. I don't want to scare people.
Well, but you did. Mission failed.
Mission failed. So I guess I'm not coming in. I'm so sorry.
I've left you behind now. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. You know, I think what's so exciting about the movie we're about to talk about is how little I knew about it. I literally had no idea what I was going in for this film, and you have no idea what you're in for with this review, which is really exciting.
God, this is going to be an unhinged review. I can already see it. I can already see it happening. Anthony, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I know you said that you wouldn't leave me behind, but I feel like you guys would leave me behind, just like Home Alone. Like, it would be like, oh, this is for Anthony. It's like my briefcase, and it would go through a line of people, and it would reach the end, and I wouldn't be there.
Pass this to Anthony. Pass this to Anthony.
No,
Pass this to Anthony.
We would have you first there. We'd have you in front of us. You would take whatever bullets come our way.
Listen, let's be honest, though. You know, the McAllisters are an awful family.
They're rich
twice.
and spoiled people.
You know, that is 100% on them. That Mrs. McAllister is a bad mom. We love Catherine O'Hara, but she's a bad mom.
Yeah, Canadian legend.
She is. I take it back. I love Home Alone so much.
I was going to say, yeah. I mean, it's that season. Of course, we are the movie podcast, and we have been very, very busy getting all this amazing movie news, reviews, and interviews out for all you folks right before we shut down for the holidays, before we have to go out there and deliver the gifts to all the kids. Because little known secret about the movie podcast, all three of us are actually Santa Claus. And that's why we take those couple of weeks off at the end there. It's not to rest. It's to deliver all the toys to all the kids of the world.
I mean, we technically deliver episodes throughout the year in hundreds of countries. So are we better than Santa Claus?
We're faster.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. We are faster than Santa Claus. This is what we do is beyond magic. It's sorcery.
Wow.
Isn't that magic as well?
It's scarier magic, I would say.
Oh, it's scary. Dude, if you say you're a magician, what's scarier? If you say you're a magician or I'm a sorcerer?
Oh, sorcerer.
I think sorcerer sounds so much scarier.
And cooler.
It does sound cool.
Yeah, if you say you're a magician, I'm like, oh, you're going to turn this balloon animal into a real animal for me or what?
Here it is.
Yeah. Again, the movie that we are talking about is Leave the World Behind. This is a film directed by Sam Esmail. And if you're wondering, why does that name sound familiar? It's because Sam is the creator behind Mr. Robot. And this movie has an all-star cast. Daniel, just like you had mentioned, I also wasn't too familiar with this movie. I mean, all I remember seeing was one of those Netflix sizzle reels about movies that are going to come out eventually. And I think there was one frame of this movie that I was like, oh, that looks kind of interesting, but I don't remember what it really was and why I even saw it. I mean, I guess I saw it because it was there, but I didn't know anything about this movie. So I sat in that theater, saw the posters, saw who was in this movie, and I was like, oh my God, Julia Roberts is in this. Oh my God, Mahershala Ali is in this. Oh my God, Ethan Hawke is in this. And then I stopped saying, oh my God, because everyone was like, stop saying that. So yeah, I'm very, very excited to talk about this film. This movie is all about a family's vacation is upended when two strangers arrive at night seeking refuge from a cyber attack that grows more terrifying by the minute, forcing everyone to come into terms with the places that they are in a collapsing world. Again, I want to give a huge shout out to our friends over at Netflix for inviting us to come watch this movie. We also had a chance to sit down with one of the VFX supervisors for this film, where they really broke down a lot of the effects in this movie, because there's a lot to talk about in this movie. All the effects, all the different scenes that you've seen. So let's get into it. Daniel, please kick us off with your first reactions to Leave the World Behind.
Now, I do want to preface this by saying that the film is out now on Netflix, so I feel like we're a little okay to talk more.
Let's go spoilers. Let's go spoilers.
You know, we'll go spoilers. So forewarning to anybody listening, we're going to talk about some shit.
In 3, 2, 1.
Oh my God. No, I'm kidding. Listen, as I said at the top of the show, I legit had zero knowledge of this film existing. I saw the sizzle reel earlier this year in January when it dropped, and I think I was just so preoccupied by everything else in that sizzle reel of what was coming out, like Maestro and Rebel Moon and all these other projects that Netflix was having. I mean, let's face it, Netflix has a lot of movies and shows that release every single day. So I didn't think about this until we got the invite to watch it. And the reason why I mentioned that we got an invite to watch it is because we got to watch it in a movie theater, which we don't typically get all the time with Netflix releases. It happens more with like the bigger titles. We'll see them in theaters, but oftentimes we will, have a screening link. We'll watch it at home. We'll watch it on Netflix and do it that way. But let me tell you, the first 5 minutes of this movie sold me. And this is something that I know Anthony says all the time on the movie podcast. You have that 5-minute window to really grab my attention. And I didn't know what this movie was. I knew it was called Leave the World Behind. I then looked up, I'm like, okay, Mahershala Ali's in it, Julia Roberts, Ethan Hawke, all these amazing people are in this film. And it just took me. This movie took me, and it had control of me for the 2 hours that it was on. And this is what is so special about a movie like Leave the World Behind, is that you can go into something, not know what it's about at all, and then just be completely blown away. Is this my favorite movie of the year? No, but it's one of my favorite theatrical experiences of the year, only because you really got to experience not knowing where this film was going to go. And that's what's so fun about it. Shay gave the synopsis about, you have this duo coming to the door and saying like, hey, listen, can we spend the night? And already you're faced with that moral, that moral dilemma of like, okay, if somebody knocked on my door in the middle of the night asking to stay, would I let them? We've all stayed in Airbnbs in our lives. If the owner ever knocked on our door, I mean, we really wouldn't know, because we all communicate through the app and we just know the name. But you're just like, okay, are you really the person you say you are? Is this really your house? So already that creates a really fun conversation with people you're watching this movie with. And now, having watched the movie again, now at home, it's that whole thing where I'm like, I wish I had people to talk about this right now, because it's like, would you let them in? Would you want to let them stay? And that's what I think is so fun about movies like this and movies like this coming out on Netflix, because it reminds me of Bird Box. And Shay, that's something that you were saying a lot while watching this film, where it could have that viralness of Bird Box, where people would be like, can you survive? Would you be able to do this? And then you see the actual story of what's happening, where you're getting this, you're having this family that is, in an Airbnb on vacation, and the world around them is basically ceasing to communicate with one another, and how scary and isolating that is. And then it really makes you scared of the world that we live in, because you're like, this doesn't seem that far off. And I think that's something that Mr. Robot did so well. And a lot of shows that deal with technology in more of a grounded sense, where you're just like, this is entirely possible to happen in the world that we're in. And how would you react? Would you survive? Would you believe what's going on? Or would you, turn into, a crazy, like Book of Revelation state person, right? And, you get a lot of that in this movie. And I think that's what's so fun about watching people really start to let their walls down and change from where they start in this film and where they end in this movie. And there's some genuinely terrifying shots. Earlier this year, we reviewed Knock at the Cabin, which again, interesting pairing with this movie, because it's like these people coming to your door and letting you know that basically the world is ending. But there's a shot in that film where you see like just a bunch of planes in the sky crashing, and there's a scene like that in like Leave the World Behind as well too, that scared the shit out of me. And this is one of those films like this. Movies like this will scare me way more than, you know, a gore fest or any horror film, because there's that level of realness in it. And I think that's what I love so much about it. I know there's a lot more we're going to talk about, but I will just say I had a great time watching this film. I did not expect it, and I think that's what makes me so excited to talk about with you guys, because we're going to talk about all the spoilers and everything soon. But what a great time watching this movie. You have great performances in it, and it's just such a simple concept, such a simple premise to a movie, but oh my God, some of the best cinematography of the year. Absolutely incredible. The cinematographer's name is Todd Campbell, who just unbelievable. And some of the VFX in this we'll talk about too. But yeah, I had a great time with Leave the World Behind.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, man. Like, this is one of those movies that you do not expect. And again, since we kind of didn't know anything about it, walking out of this movie, I was like, this was terrifying. This was a terrifying experience.
Yeah.
It reminded me a lot of some of the great movies I used to watch, you know, back really in that mid 2000s era of this is the plot of the film. It might be a little ludicrous, but hey, family in the cabin, go ahead and run with it. And there's this underlining, you know, message in this movie that really I'm sure is going to be dragged out a lot by people. You look at our use of excess and everything that's, especially in the United States and in Canada, we have this tendency to overuse. This movie really highlights a lot of those points, I feel. You also look at one of the most interesting plot points of this movie is for the daughter to finish Friends. I'm talking about the show Friends, the one that everyone knows and everyone's seen. One of the main plot points of this movie is that she just can't seem to finish the last episode of the show because the internet is going out. You think of cyberattacks, you think of AI, you think of all these things, and sometimes they can come off a little cheesy when they're done in films because it's something that it might feel a bit too tangible that you're like, okay, this isn't really going to happen. The movie does a really, really good job because you've isolated the family in a certain location. You start to feel isolated with them. So when everything starts to kind of happen, you are in that camp of disbelief, which again, so is the family. And as things start to become a lot more real, you start to question the motives, the players in the game here, the visuals, everything that's kind of happening in this movie. You start to question a lot of it and wonder what's real, what's not happening. And this movie does a really good job of keeping suspension and disbelief, but also just suspense in general. But Anthony, please hit us with your first reactions to Leave the World Behind.
Leave the World Behind for me is one of those psychological thrillers that you find yourself asking, what would you do if you were in their shoes? And I think a lot of people will come out of that thinking that. And like, we like to think of ourselves as, you know, a culture of survivalists because of, you know, Walking Dead or The Last of Us. There is this feeling that, yeah, we could survive without technology, but like, can we survive without the technology, especially when there's something like a cyber attack that you have no access to internet, you don't have access to a lot of the things that we're just used to. What do we do? Can we operate as a whole, or do we just survive on our own and everyone fends for themselves? And that's the one thing I liked about this movie is it starts to it questions your logic and what you would do in scenarios like this, because you're just taking two ordinary families and putting them in a situation where they're asked to do something that they're not designed to do. And you know, the way this movie is shot feels very much, if I could compare it to any other movie, it's very much like War of the Worlds, like Spielberg's War of the Worlds. Because, you know, when that movie came out, that first 30 minutes, it's like that lead up to something eerie is about to happen. And very similar to this movie, there's like this eeriness. There's this big boat that lands on shore, and you could feel it and you can sense that something bad is about to happen as we progress through the story. And you have like basic average families that go on vacation, and then pandemonium starts to happen, and all of a sudden strangers are knocking on your door claiming that, hey, this house that you rented belongs to me. Do I trust you? Do I not trust you? There's a lot of like suspiciousness on both parts, and like, what are each other's motives? Like, do I trust your motive? Do I trust who you are? And I think for me, if Mahershala Ali showed up in a tuxedo in front of my door, 100% I'm letting him in. I don't care if he kills me. We're gonna have a good conversation.
Mahershala
Please,
Ali,
come on in.
We're gonna have a
Oscar
good-
winner.
Come on in, dude.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I'm like,
Come on in, dude.
Let's chat.
So this movie really creates this level of paranoia that sticks with you to the end, where again, you don't know who to trust and what to trust, but there's always like this feeling of I feel like something bad's going to happen. Something bad's going to happen, and you'll see throughout these characters' journey, you're going to see that they have a reasoning to feel that way. Julia Roberts, when you see her, she is quintessentially the Karen, very in control, the alpha of the relationship between her and Ethan. I was going to say Ethan Hunt. Ethan Hawke. She's a bit of a, she's a bit of a racist, but there's a gray area to her character.
Like it plays on those like racial stereotypes that she's just like, okay, like immediately, like when Mahershala and his daughter come to the door, it's like you see in her eyes, she's like, I don't believe a black family would own this home. You know what I mean? And like you see those microaggressions. I mean, and some of them aren't so micro in the film too, but that she'll drop. You're just like, oh, okay, my God, you're really showing your colors here, who your character is.
Did you feel like it sometimes they pushed it too much though for Julia Roberts' character, that I felt at a certain point I'm like, I think we get it. I think that we get that she's a racist. And I just kind of felt like they were still a little bit too late into the story. They were still kind of driving that home.
The one that really stuck out to me, and I felt it a lot more on the rewatch, is when they're sitting poolside. And Julia Roberts is talking to Mahershala Ali's daughter,
yes,
who's played by an actress that we really like from Myha'la from Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Where she's like, I'm not going to go swimming, and Julia Roberts is like, why? Because you don't want to get your hair wet. It's like, oh my God, Jesus, like who says that? But I guess
passive aggressiveness.
That is a reality for a lot of people. But it was just like, oh my gosh, like you really want us to know that she is a racist person.
Yeah,
And Mahershala and his daughter, they play like the calm structure for this film. Really, like they are the calmness to the pandemonium that's happening around.
The storm.
Exactly. And as
Literally,
you go through this journey, you start to question, like, is this a future that could happen? And honestly, like, is this something that could actually happen in our real world? And definitely it's a movie that will spark a lot of questions once it comes out.
It reminded me a lot of, I know we spoke about this already in this episode, but we spoke about Bird Box. I don't know if Blackbird. Bird Box. We spoke about that, and almost like the
singing
in the dead of night. We spoke about the cultural phenomenon that film had when it came out, because it also dealt with a lot of questions. I think what worked really well for Bird Box is you didn't give us everything. You didn't show us the whole bag. You gave us enough to keep the audience guessing, and that's what this movie does a really good job of. I think a movie that I found very similar to this in a certain way, by Dan Trachtenberg, was 10 Cloverfield Lane, where again you have a character, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who just wakes up because she got into a car accident in this bunker, and it's like this belief of like the world outside has gone to shit. Trust me on this. And the whole time as the audience, you're with these characters like, is this actually happening out there? Because yeah, sure, the internet's out. Yeah, sure, things like this are happening, but it seems okay. It isn't until we really start to go outside of the confines of the house a little bit that we get these crazy scenarios occurring. For example, I think about the moment with Ethan Hawke, and he bumps into the lady speaking Spanish on the street, and how there's a franticness, and the plane comes by. It drops off those flyers with Arabic writing on them. I think it was the moment that, and I forgot to mention this character because
drones, right? Sorry,
the drone. Sorry, not a plane,
yeah.
But yes, drone comes by, drops them off. I forgot to mention, Kevin Bacon is in this film, big actor.
Yeah,
not a huge role, but he definitely leaves his mark, and his character really kind of helps us to kind of figure out what could possibly be happening here. And there's that moment of understanding of, is this just an attack on the United States within the United States? Like, is it just have them all kind of just ruin each other? And you start to wonder, and you have all these questions that kind of come out from it, and you're so curious, like, what is this movie really trying to tell us? What is it really about? And it's about, obviously, information, how fast it spreads, misinformation, how fast it spreads as well. There's so much to pick apart from this, but the performances are really what keep you in your seat, because you buy it. You buy what these characters are believing. You buy what they're going through. and the effects and the way the cinematography is done creates such a compelling visual narrative that it pulls you right into the movie. I remember so many times all three of us would just look at each other in shock. And it's because we watched in the theater that I felt like it really amped up that experience, because I look over at you guys and be like, did you see that? Did you see that shot that where the camera moved in from one room to the other?
It's
and
like
then they broke it down.
Right?
Exactly.
Like it's like literally like Spielberg, the way Spielberg moves with characters, you get so much of that in this film. And again, at the end of the day, it's like the script in the hands of a less capable director would have been a completely different movie. But you have like this A-list cast, you have this director who is directing the hell out of this movie, and he's bringing so much to it. And you had the cinematography and the effects. You're like, wow, like this is up there, like with, you know, one of the greatest, like, you know, twist type movies ever. Like this would be something that, like you said, Shay, like in the 2000s, that Shyamalan, this would have been like in the 2000s, this would have been like
Remind me of Signs.
Shyamalan, you know, that Shyamalan movie that people would be like, this guy's incredible. Like this is a movie that deserves your attention, right? But yeah, wow, like what, like I couldn't get over the cinematography of this film, especially early on when they get to the Airbnb and Julia Roberts is like going upstairs and walking through the hallway, then it's outside, then it's inside. I'm like, my God, you guys are just like flexing right now.
The visual effects is what really shocked me, because we watched this movie, and at the end of it, we had a little sit down with the VFX supervisor, and this guy was breaking down the scenes and what it took to build a lot of the sequence that we see in these movies. And the amount of visual effects in this movie is like David Fincher level, you know, things that you just trees, and there's a sequence
Dude,
where
it's like Avengers level, really, like, because you're just like, what? This is all recreated, like you would never have thought.
The sequence with Julia Roberts in the car, and she's talking to a friend, and she's just telling her about where she's going, and the reflection on the glasses to the movement of the camera through the car, the touchscreen on the car monitor, everything is all VFX. So you can't really trust what you see with your own eyes, other than, okay, that's a plane that's about to crash, or the water going through, you know, the house, or this big explosion and all that. But man, the visual effects are very subtle, and I hope like people take the time to find the demo reel, or hopefully they post the reel of how these visual effects are made, because you would never guess that, yeah, that whole sequence was not real.
There's so much. The movie touches on so much of that fine tuning to really amplify the scene. There's movies that use CG to tell their entire story, and there's movies like this that use CG to enhance the story, to really push what the scene is going forward. And this movie does such a good job of that. Of course, there are some moments where I found I'm like, okay, this is clearly obviously CG, but it works. It really works. It works in the type of movie that it is. You have to kind of really look at the lens of like, what is this movie really trying to show me, and do I buy it? And it does it, I think, all the time.
Yeah, because I think if you go like sometimes too much, like we were talking about, there's that sequence where the plane comes out of the sky and crashes. I feel like it would have been a big ball of fire, but you didn't see that. It was just more of like a crash, and then the sand and the water kind of surrounded Mahershala Ali's character. But what I think also enhances that is that because they painted out so much of the background using VFX, using greenery, like literally like forestry to hide a lot of the world, it really makes this family feel so much more isolated. And throughout the entirety of this film, I just felt that dread, you know, that feeling in your stomach, where like that anxiety, where just like, I just feel uneasy. I don't like this. What's really going on here? And what really is going on here? There's a cyber attack happening. You're getting bits and pieces of information. We don't know, or it's not really revealed to us what's happening or who's doing it, but we do know that America is under attack, and this family is now an island, you know, allegedly to the rest of the world, as everyone is in this moment, right?
And I love the performances in this movie. Of course, the standout cast of, you know, Julia Roberts, Mahershala Ali, Ethan Hawke, Myha'la, and Kevin Bacon, they're all amazing. You know, it's exactly what you want from them to do. They give such a nuanced performance, and they all have really, really good chemistry. You really buy it. I feel like we haven't seen Julia Roberts in something in a very long time. And it kept making me laugh that Julia Roberts is in a movie where Friends is one of the main subplots, and she was in Friends. So you kind of wonder, what was her daughter thinking when she's watching that episode? Like, is that mom? Is this you? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, she looks so much like
So
you.
much like you. But let's talk about the son, Charlie Evans, who's played by Charlie Evans, and his name is Archie. It's like a young Adam Driver. This guy.
Oh my God, he has a again, like, I know we're talking spoilers here, but he gets
the
really
worst
bad
dealt.
card dealt to him.
Worst.
That scene is going to go down in history this year as one of the most uncomfortable scenes I've ever felt in the theater.
Yeah.
Where he's just like, he goes and he starts pulling out his teeth, and you're just like, oh my God.
Yeah, horrifying.
Like, we all just like grabbed each other. We were all just like,
we all grabbed his teeth and pulled them right out.
Yeah, and pulled them, and they slipped right out.
That moment was very shocking because I didn't expect. Like, I thought, oh my God, this poor kid. What is he suffering from? Where the next day his teeth are just coming out of his mouth, like not just like the full root, man. And it's awful. And like and I kept thinking at the end of this movie, like there's no fixing it. He's not fixing his teeth. Like that's
no more.
That's his mouth for the rest of his life.
He should have stopped pulling them out. Really.
You wonder, right? Because you're just like, oh, is that just going to be like, are they just going to be like in your mouth? Oh, God. Anthony's face was priceless, though. Like, I literally remember looking at Anthony, and he was just like that, like that SpongeBob meme, or sorry, the Patrick meme.
The Patrick
being
meme,
like,
yeah.
Like, Anthony's face was just like jaw dropped, just could not believe what he was seeing.
Jaw dropped, it fell out, everything.
It was unbelievable, yeah. But there's a lot of moments like that in this film.
Absolutely, and we've talked about what really works in this movie, and there's a lot that really works. But I'm curious for you guys, what didn't work for you? What are some things that you feel like, okay, maybe I wish they did it differently, or maybe I wish they kind of focused on this a little bit different? But and Daniel, we'll start with you.
For me, the biggest things, at 2 hours and 20 minutes, I think towards the latter half of this film, you really start to feel the length a little bit. It almost feels a little bit more like a play, because the characters kind of divide up, and you're like, okay, here's Mahershala and Julia Roberts. They're going to get their scene. And then here's Ethan Hawke and it's Myha'la, right? Like they're having their scene, and then the kids are having their scene. So it's almost like we're getting like these little vignettes of storytelling. We're like, okay, I think we could tighten this up a little bit more. So you start to feel the length a little bit at the end. But I think the biggest thing for me was the score of the movie. Not that the score is bad. I just think that it almost was trying to direct you to feel a certain way too often, in the way that we would get from like an 80s movie or a 90s movie, where something would happen and the music would be like, like it would almost have like those type of singers.
Suspense music in a way.
Yes.
Yeah, you're just like, oh, like you're giving me these sounds that you're trying to make me feel like this is something bad happened. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. I see it. So like we were getting moments like that. We're like, oh, the music is very prevalent in the scene to direct your emotion. And it's funny because that's something that we used to get a lot in 2000s and 90s and 80s films. But it's also something that I felt watching May December, which also just came out and is also a Netflix film, where I'm like,
Definitely.
wow, like this 100%. Almost has like May December has a score. And again, it's not a bad score, but it reminded me of like Basic Instinct or A Few Good Men, where you have like this music that is so just like, you're just like, okay, like you're really trying to focus my emotions in a certain way with the score. But again, not that it's a bad score. It's just funny in those moments. What's happening is scary enough. Sometimes when you add that extra layer or that layer of music to it, you're just like, okay, now it feels a little cartoony.
Yeah, it's a little handholdy, I think. Like, you've already shown us the horror of what's happening here. The camera has shown us with the way that it's shot. The score, I felt like, really was like, did you get it? Like, did you get that this is terrible? Yes, definitely can be a bit much. Anthony, what about yourself?
I think it was more of the sequence right when Mahershala and Julia Roberts, they have that scene together in the room with the records. From that point, I felt a little tired, a little yawny, just because I've been with this family for a very long,
a little yawny,
long time. And I think at that point, if I remember correctly, I don't know, did they leave? Did they leave and then come back, or did they come? Or is that before they left? I'm not too sure. But there's a sequence with a bunch of Teslas, and that was like where
I think that's after they came back. I think they had come back already at that point.
Okay, so
I could be wrong, but I feel like they came back because the next morning, everyone felt like they were tighter, and then the events happened from there. But
with a movie like this, you have to end off with a really big bang, and I kind of felt it and I kind of didn't, just because it's hard to end a film that has some sort of dystopian vibe that hasn't happened yet. Like it's in the progress of happening, and I felt like the ending might have been anticlimactic, but there are really interesting subplots that I recognize in this movie that I don't know if we want to talk about it now, but
yeah, please go ahead.
A direct sequel to Mr. Robot. I think this is a story that takes place in the Mr. Robot universe.
Interesting.
And I think it either it's a sequel or it takes place in the same universe. And there's two reasons. There's a scene where Amanda, who's played by Julia Roberts, picks up her phone off a novel called Beach Towel by Otto Irving. And if you watch Mr. Robot series, you'll know Otto Irving is a character played by Bobby Cannavale, who's a dark army operative. So if he had his book published, he's a real person in this world, and she's reading that story. And then there's another scene where Amanda and Ruth are having, they're talking at the kitchen table about outages, and Ruth says, hackers got into power plants back. Remember, there was a meltdown in Jersey City, which I think she's
for Mile Island.
She's referring to season 4 finale of where the township power plant had a meltdown. So this begs the question, is Elliot involved in this? Is he part of this? Who, there's probably a bunch of other Easter eggs that are.
Who was that
related.
guy that Mahershala's talking about? In
exactly,
scene,
is that Mr. Robot? Is that the new Mr. Robot? Is that Rami Malek? So I 100% can say that this is taking place in the same universe.
Yeah.
Is it is there going to be a continuation of the story? Who knows? That's something that we'll have to see.
It's more Cloverfield-like again, right? Because again, 10 Cloverfield Lane, it doesn't really feel connected to that world until you step out into it. And this
until the last scene.
And this kind of feels very similar. I'm very curious. Movies like this, Anthony, that's a really astute observation that you brought in. So I'm wondering, once this movie comes out, if that's going to start to really be picked up. And I'm sure there's going to be more things that people pick up. I look at movies like this and I think about movies that aren't out yet, but like A Quiet Place Day One, for example, where it's like the beginning of what is about to happen. This movie literally feels like that we would have gotten this movie after we had gotten the movie that took place during.
I totally get what you're saying. Like, this feels like a spin-off film where it's like, this is like the prequel before this happened. It's funny because we were talking about like Walking Dead and stuff that earlier,
right? Where
that's another one that had all of these spin-offs telling different perspectives and all of that, right? But one of the things I know that we kept talking about it while we were watching the film, not that we were talking throughout the film, but we'd whisper like, it's all about how this film's going to end. This movie needs to nail its ending, and I'm curious for you guys, did it nail the ending for you? I know, Anthony, you said it's a little anticlimactic, but I guess I'm more talking about the revelation of what was happening. Did you like that? Well, not did you like that the states was being attacked, but did you
like
that
the
revelation
death and destruction?
Yeah, but the revelation, and you seeing like these bombs dropping on New York, and knowing that like, oh, the country is under attack. How did you feel knowing that this was a real thing? This wasn't Mahershala and his daughter trying to fool them into taking over the house or something.
Yeah, it wasn't like this big conspiracy theory. So here's the thing. I wasn't super happy with it at the end, but when I came across this Mr. Robot thing, it made everything feel so much bigger. And now I was like, okay, where do we go from here? So I do like the ending now, because now it's part of a bigger world, because it's taking place in the same universe. And what other stories are we going to see after the fact? Because, Mr. Robot was more of like, cybercrime hackers. Now this is like, we're ending off with total destruction and devastation for, the US. I don't know what the rest of the world looks like, but what does that look like in the future? Do we now go into something that's very similar to, The Last of Us or factions of different states that have different rules? And it's a whole new opening. Again, this is just a theory for me. I'm 100% committed to this theory, but the ending changed once I learned about all these little hidden Easter eggs.
That's true. Yeah.
Interesting. I think Daniel, for myself, I think the ending stuck its landing for me because there was a lot of unanswered questions that still kind of are unanswered, but the small things that I really cared about in a way for it to hit me, it did. Like when we got to that ending where you see the daughter, she goes to this house, breaks in, eats the food, like that annoyed me so much because I'm like, she's eating the food, drinking all the water. It reminded me of
like your family.
Your family. It reminded me of the movie This Is the End with Danny McBride drinking all the water. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like you gotta ration this. The world is ending. But obviously kids don't know. That's how they are. And then she kind of goes off, finds a bunker. First of all, bravest kid ever. If this was me, I ain't going in a bunker. I am not opening any doors. No way. But she's going down there. And then, of course, lo and behold, you see a stack of DVDs in the wall. And that running joke pretty much of this whole movie of watching that final episode of Friends, I'm like, it's going to happen. She's going to pop in Friends. And the fact that it was the last one, it was the same disc that we've had, that we've owned. And I'm like, oh my God. Just a rush of emotions came and it just cut to black. I was like, this is it. This is how you end the movie. And for me, it satisfied me, Anthony. I love where you're going with it. I love that, you've given us this opportunity of this whole world that is open up there. Yeah, I think if this movie is successful, which I think it will be for Netflix, I think it'll be a really big hit. I think it'll have that Bird Box effect. I mean, at least you hope. I think that we could see more movies or more material out there in this world.
Yeah, I hope so, because I'm with you guys. Like, there was a lot that I liked about this ending, and the shot alone of seeing Julia Roberts and Myha'la like looking out and seeing like the city being destroyed is terrifying. Having the the Ethan Hawke and Kevin Bacon almost like standoff for the medication, also really interesting. It feels like something that would have happened earlier in the film, so for it to be the last scene in the movie for those characters, you're just like, okay, like I wish there was a little bit something extra, but then you get that Friends ending with the theme song kicking in, and you're just like, yep, like this is the world now. And as weird as it sounded, it gave me vibes of like, when COVID was starting, right? And I think a lot of people will make those connections as well too. I don't believe though that this kid who is an iPad baby will have any idea how to operate a DVD player. I'm sorry. There's no way this kid knows how to switch the input of the TV, put in the DVD. No, there's no way.
That was the most unreal part of this movie. The most unreal part. Not even the bombs.
Not even the drones. No. That was it. The fact that this kid, this like 10-year-old, knows how to operate a DVD player, and no way.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you guys. I think there's a lot of really cool things this movie does. It does kind of give you one of those endings where it's either going to really piss you off or you're going to be like, this is exciting. Again, I think we're all kind of in the camp of this is exciting, but I can totally see people being like, no, I wanted the ending. I wanted it to be over. It's like, no, this is now the world. Like it's kind of reminded me of the Mist in a much more tame sense.
Yeah.
Whereas the Mist kind of ends and you're like, oh my God, this is horrific. This is kind of like, oh, this sucks.
Or like Life, like there's a lot of
movie
movies
Life. I thought you meant like Life in general.
No, Life too. Like this
Life
is this sucks.
Yeah, Life with Rebecca Ferguson, right? Yes.
And Ryan Reynolds and
Jake
Gyllenhaal, yeah.
And Venom. Yes.
Remember when everyone thought that was a Venom, like secret Venom movie? Would have been cool.
Would have been really cool.
Would have been cool.
Anything else before we go ahead and give our final recommendations for Leave the World Behind?
I think we're good, man.
Time to leave this conversation behind and give the audience our final recommendation. Anthony, I'll start with you.
This is a watch it. If you're a fan of Mr. Robot, definitely watch it. But if you're not, or you don't know anything about Mr. Robot, watch it, then go watch Mr. Robot. But I just think like there's more to this story than just the end of the world. There's a bigger story that's playing out here that hopefully we get more and more about it, because I feel like Netflix has been really quiet about it, and Mr. Robot has been out of the picture for so long. I think if I remember correctly, it was like on USA
Network.
Are they even a network anymore? Probably, maybe, I don't know. But like it's gone from the minds of a lot of people. So now that we have this little like thing that we can take, who knows where we go from there? Is Netflix the new home of the next Mr. Robot? We'll see.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Daniel, what about yourself?
It is an easy watch it for me. I think this is such a fun movie. I think this is one that you will have a blast watching with your family and with friends watching it. So if you have people over over the holidays. Like, this is like the perfect Boxing Day movie. So like if you want to watch your Christmas movies right now, great. But this is the perfect movie to put on when you have family over, because everyone is just going to sit down and watch, and then people will start giving their opinions, and it's just a merry conversation that's going to happen. So definitely watch it, make time for it. You'll have a great time with it. There's some great performances in it. And when you have a movie that will, I think, hold up on repeat watchings, or you'll get more from it the more that you watch, I'm so down to get more from this world, or secret sequels to Mr. Robot or whatever, because there's a really cool world that they've established here, and I wouldn't mind spending more time with it, from the comfort of my couch.
Absolutely. I know, I totally agree with you that this is a great Boxing Day movie. It really fits well. And for those of us who don't know what Boxing Day is, because you're like, I live in the United States, Boxing Day is just the day after Christmas. It's usually like our Black Friday for Canadians, and I think people in the UK as well. So that's just kind of all that it is. We don't actually fight. As a kid, I thought Boxing Day was when we fought. I don't know. I was new to Canada, so I had to accept it. But on my end here as well, I will say this is an easy watch. It definitely check it out. You have a Netflix subscription. This is one of the Netflix originals that we highly recommend. Watch it with people, especially because you want to see the crowd's reactions to almost every scene. And if you're going to be a champion of this movie, you're going to be showing it to your family, your friends, and everybody. And you're going to gauge their reactions every time to either the ending or different moments in the movie. And you'll probably pick up on more stuff as you watch it as well. So definitely recommended. Of course, we're the MUBI Podcast. You can follow us every single place at the MUBI Podcast. Our show notes down below on wherever you're watching us or listening to us have all those details available to you. You can go ahead and join our Discord as well and talk about movies like this, movies like Oppenheimer, which we're still talking about in there. That's our longest running spoiler room chat, but it's popping all the time. It's popping.
It's never going away.
Never going away. That's gonna be the group chat that remains there forever. Yeah. But go ahead and join that. We have a lot of great contests that are occurring also on our Instagram and Twitter feeds. So go ahead and give that a listen and check that out. Not a listen, because it's just a social media platform. If you're watching this on YouTube, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe as well. We really appreciate it. We love reading these comments. On Spotify, we actually have a Q&A section and sometimes even a poll that you can go ahead and answer and reply to. Really helps us out, all the engagement. We're really grateful for it. We are going to be going away for the holidays very soon, so get as much MUBI podcast as you can, because once we're gone, we're not back until 2024.
That's true.
And that was this time with the MUBI Podcast, and we'll see you next.